So I recently got asked this question: any advice for owners of the Pioneer and DCT transmission to protect it and help with long-term longevity? Now I'm gonna make this a two-part video. One, I'm gonna answer that question, and also I'm gonna go over the different drive chains, functions, stuff that might be a little different if you came from a built machine or maybe just don't mechanically understand the dual clutch transmission or the difference in drivetrain modes. One of the biggest reasons for the clutch failures on a DCT transmission is a voltage drop. Now, a lot of people, this is why they like doing the dual batteries, isolators, that type of stuff. I have a video of my setup on that, but it's not something that you must do. Depending on what you use it for is whether you need it, but at the very least, install a voltage gauge. The reason that you want to install that voltage gauge is that way you can keep an eye on it. If you're getting into a scenario where you're getting into a lot of stop and go and clutching, winching scenarios, and you notice that voltage drop or anything feel funny about the clutch engagement, immediately stop, let the machine idle and build that voltage up. That low voltage will not fully engage the clutches, potentially cause them to slip and burn up. First thing for that is using high and low correctly. Now there's a lot of debates and arguments that if you're 20 miles an hour or under, you need to ride low or stuff like that. The speed is not necessarily the deciding factor as to high or low. If I am running around my neighborhood and I'm running in 20-25 mile an hour zones, high will be perfectly fine. I'm not putting that clutch under too much of a stress. That's an easy light load. On the flip side, I could be going 25 to 30 miles an hour, but if I have 6 people in a machine, I have the bed loaded down, I'm going up and down hills, even though I'm getting towards the end of the higher top speed, I should be in low. It's how much strain are you putting on those clutches as to answer which one of these two you should be in. And the more you drive the machine, you're going to realize it. If you're getting up, if you go to get the machine going and it's kind of struggling to get the machine moving and you're in high, that's the time to put it in low. But if you're staying in gear, constant roll, and you're not struggling on the start, high will be fine for a lot of applications as well. But it's whether the machine struggles is the key there. Now, heat is an issue too when you get into the DCTs and stuff. One of the things I would watch out for is if you're constantly going back and forth between gears. So say you're in low and you're hitting a speed where you slightly go downhill and then slightly go uphill, and the machine is going second, third, back to second, back to third, just consistently, like every few seconds it's shifting because maybe you're slightly downhill, uphill, just in a rolling section or something like that. If you notice that's becoming a pattern, each time it's shifting, it's using voltage, it's also increasing heat. So if you get in that weird scenario where it just kind of struggles and keeps changing gears because it doesn't know where it should be, that's when hit the manual button and use your paddle shifters and keep it locked in that lower gear for a while until you get back out in a section where you can let the automatic kind of take over again. Next topic of conversation I'm going over is tunes. Now, I'm not going to go into who does what tune or anything like that. That gets to be a very controversial topic anytime it's brought up on Facebook. But what I am going to do is going to give you some food for thought. And ultimately, you make your own decision whether to tune the machine or not and what it may be the best for you. Now, even if you don't do a tune, having a programmer is a useful thing. You're going to have a display of information. My model Pioneer, I always felt like it needed another bar because you didn't know when it was going to get to that puking point based off the bars. A third bar that kind of lets you know you were there, or a digital temperature gauge like the display has on the tuner is a nice thing to have. Also, if you ever need to do a clutch relearn, you can do that with the programmer as well. These are emission compliant machines, and a lot of times with the tuning and everything that comes out, they end up running a little bit on the hot side. Same thing if you've had experience with a lot of Honda motorcycles and their jetting in theory there. Now with the tune, you can adjust the fuel curves and the timing, which can help the motor and actually run a little bit cooler. Also, you can program the fans to come on earlier, which gives you a little bit buffer. Again, keeping the machine cool is important or in proper temperature range. The last thing that to really think about when it comes to tune and longevity is you also have the ability to program clutch engagement. Now, I have a hybrid tune to where if I go to do something and the machine gets into a bind, I can actually stall the machine. Now, the reason I do that is I would rather stall the machine than let the clutches sit there and slip. Now, in the The con to that is I have a little bit more of a quick engagement as far as trying to get up on rocks and stuff like that. It's not as smooth as the factory tune, but again, I did that for a longevity point. So if you're familiar with how a manual vehicle works, think of going up a steep hill and you let the clutch be halfway engaged. As you're going up that hill, it's going to be a little bit smoother, but you're slipping the clutch, building heat and wearing it in the process. Whereas if you go ahead and get the clutch fully engaged, it may be a little jerky and stuff getting it going, but it's not as much wear and tear on the clutch. Ultimately, you need to pick what's going to be the best for your riding style. A little slip every now and again is not a big thing, but if you're finding yourself in big binds and letting the clutch actively slip, that's an issue. So a lot of the mud guys with the bigger tires and stuff like that, they get a little bit more aggressive on their clutch engagement as well, but just food for thought depending on how you ride. Unlike a vehicle, you can't control the clutch engagement individually while you're driving, but the one thing you do have control over is your throttle. So keep that in mind if you come up to an obstacle when you're trying to get up over it, if you're in deep sand or mud like that. If you're just barely in the throttle and the wheels are not moving, that smooth feel is actually going to be the clutch is slipping, or if it's struggling to get going. In that case, go ahead and get into the throttle. Even if you spin a little bit in the mud or sand like that, that's actually better than a long slow pull while the clutches are continuously slipping in the process. Another thing to keep check on is your adjustments for your shifter from park down to low. I have a video for the 16 to 21 models as far as that low range adjustment, but definitely keep checking that, because last thing you want to do is put it in low but actually be in between on the selector shift or something like that. It can cause pretty big issues. The 22 up seem to be better about that. The engagement always has felt better with those machines that I've driven, but time will tell. So that's something I'd kind of keep up with on maybe Facebook or forums if somebody starts having problems or suggestions there. Keep up with your cable adjustments, check your slack and stuff like that. That was a potential issue with mine, is I thought I was in low. The indicator said I was in low, hit the gas, bounced off the rev limiter, and then the machine tried to engage. Honda did cover that with the extended warranty, but they tried to claim that it was because I was shifting from high to low while I'm moving, which I was not. Now, put it in gear. The only thing I would say, a good food for thought, is just give it a light bump. Make sure that it is in high or it is in low. And the issue what I did is I put it in low, thought I was in low, went to take off quickly, just smacked the throttle, RPM shot up into the red line, and then the subtrans tried to engage in low. That was the beginning of the end for that. And one of the more basic ones right here, to avoid drivetrain damage, come to a stop before using shift to drive or drive select mode. So whether it's here, any of those, or this, come to a stop. Now, I have had a couple buddies get good miles on Pioneers, just kind of using the roll method for the four-wheel drive, where they make sure they're not spinning and they're just rolling forward at a few miles an hour before they change the selectors there. I always try to stop. Now, if I come up on a serious hill and was in two-wheel drive and thought I might be potentially flipping and I needed four-wheel drive, yeah, I would take my chances to go ahead and engage it. But for a longevity thing, follow the Honda directions, stop and engage it there. Same thing with here. You don't want to be still rolling backwards and just throw it in high. Again, some cars have a torque converter, so you might be able to get by with that on certain vehicles, or the vehicle may hold off that engagement. There is no electronic between what you're doing here and with the transmission. So if you're rolling reverse and you put it in high, there's no computer or solenoid that's waiting for it to come to a stop to then engage it in high. You're causing damage in the process. Don't have the diff lock and you have four-wheel drive on, you do a big hill climb or something like that, I would say manual can be your friends in my experience. Click down on the power shifter, keep your RPMs up, because that front tire is using the brakes to get the traction from the left to the right, back and forth. Like any machine, maintenance is going to be key for longevity as well. I recently put out a video of how to do most of your Honda maintenance. Feel free to check that out. And with the Pioneer, it is a wet clutch transmission. Make sure you use a Honda compatible spec as far as the oil goes. If you put a regular car oil in here, it is not going to be good for those clutches. Now, the term DCT may be new to a lot of people. Honda was one of the first ones in the power sports world to come about with this transmission. They were the pioneers, so to speak. It's on motorcycles along with some of their side-by-sides and four-wheelers, but the concept behind a DCT is there is actually two clutches. One clutch is going to operate first, third, and fifth. The second clutch is going to operate second, fourth, and sixth. So as you're going down the road in first gear and it's time to shift, the clutch that is engaging first gear will disengage. At the same time, the second clutch is going to engage and put second gear in. It's a very quick shifting transmission. It also makes a little different clinks and noises and stuff like that. Perfectly normal. Now over time the loudness may change if you depending on your programming and stuff like that. Model year they sound slightly different, but it's a very unique sounding transmission. You have the updated cluster. Now with the cluster, it now has a clutch temperature indicator, which is nice to know because before you wouldn't know until your check engine light started flashing if it was an overheating clutch or something like that. And again, unless you're out in the middle of nowhere trying to count flashes from that check engine light, it's kind of hard to know what your issue is. This is saying just like a temperature gauge, hey, you're getting your clutches hot, stop, let them cool down. I like that update. Anytime you go from turf mode to two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, or diff lock, always bring the machine to a complete stop. Select what mode you're wanting to go to, and then I'm always fairly easy letting it roll forward. I don't want it to be a harsh or a rough engagement, and I always wait for the indicator to pop up saying that it's in that appropriate mode before I really get into the throttle. Same thing when you want to disengage, come to a complete stop, put the selector in what you want, easily pull forward. Sometimes a little turn on the wheel left or right will help the engagement process there, but always make sure it's engaged or disengaged before I'm back hard into the throttle. As far as different drive modes, the Honda Pioneer has a turf mode, and that varies from a lot of sport side-by-sides. Most of those have just a fixed locked rear differential. So if you ever hear them pull into a tight parking lot or a gas station like that, you'll hear the tires chirping or almost making like a barking sound. And what that is it doesn't have the ability to let one tire turn faster than the other. So the tires is the thing that is giving and making that noise, and the process is actually rougher on the drivetrain. That's why automotive application does not have full-time locked-in differentials. Now with the turf mode, you can use that around the yard and stuff, where the tires can turn at different speeds. It allows you to stop tearing up grass, hence turf mode. It's also a limit slip differential, so it will put some power to both wheels but allow them to turn at different speeds. Now I run turf mode absolutely anywhere I can as long as I have enough traction for it. It's the less stressful of the modes on the drivetrain. Now, whenever traction starts getting limited, that's where I put it in two-wheel drive. That locks the rear differential. If you ever get into needing more traction, that's where you'll put it in four-wheel drive. And then if you get in some really deep sand, mud, technical section, that's where I'm going to use the diff lock there. Now, when you engage it in diff lock, the front steering can be harder because now the front differential is locked and you're fighting the turning effect there. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Hope y'all have a good one.